Signalis, if you never heard of it, is a video game that came from Germany, and it's a top-down survival horror game that has been released in 2022. And you either never heard of it and this is your first time hearing it, or you have beaten the game, have gathered all the endings, have collected all of the achievements, and it changed your life. Now, I might be exaggerating a bit, but you get the point. So, after my friend kinda recommended me this game to me, I finally beat it and I'm gonna give my thoughts on it. So, spoiler warning for the entire game. If you haven't played it, go buy it. It doesn't cost a lot and I think it's worth it. And if you have, let's jump in. First of all, I'm gonna talk about graphics and the style of the game. And the style is basically consists of it being kinda pixelated and 3D. I don't know how you would call that, but I think the style is very unique, and especially with the games these days being very realistic, I think it's a breath of fresh air and I think it's very unique. The only thing I usually look at these kinds of games as a problem is that it might sometimes it's hard to make out what you can collect and what you can interact with, but the developers made great design choices to differentiate all the collectibles, so I think that's not a problem, which I give it the design and style of the game an A plus or S, whatever you want it. Now I'm gonna move on to a more important topic, which is gameplay, and I'm gonna talk about the positives and negatives of the game. Let's start with the positives. The positives, first of all, is that in my opinion the puzzles are very interesting and unique, and you actually have to give some thought on how to solve them, and I think that these days is kind of lacking, and I think that makes it very unique, as well as the gameplay of you needing to shoot the enemies, knock them down, and then trample them to kill them. And there's an added strategy of you needing to burn them with flares so they wouldn't wake up again. And flares are a resource that's quite rare, so you have to be very strategical with when you use them. Another interesting thing is that Signalis, you only have 6 inventory spaces, which is quite rare compared to other games in the genre, which is actually one of the first games where you actually have to look and manage your inventory, because it can get clustered and filled very fast. These things put a huge positive on the game, which it builds tension very well. And I think in these kinds of games like survival horror, building tension is the most important thing. Now I'm gonna move on to some negatives in the gameplay, and the first one is gonna be the least important one, but it is, I'm probably just a dummy, but some of the puzzles took me too long to admit. And some of them genuinely was like me being a dummy, but other ones I'm like, damn. Then you look a bit, damn, I'm screwed. And it's kind of insane, but it comes with the positive of it feeling very rewarding when you actually complete them. But for some, if you're not prepared and you're kind of accustomed to it being like yellow paint showing you where to go and you needing to just press the switch, it might discourage you from continuing the game, because it sometimes feels like you're just hitting your head into the brick wall. Another negative, which this one is very personal, and that is in Signalis, compared to other games, it feels like because of the resource management, especially if you're the type of person that is a hoarder and doesn't want to waste anything and ends up not using these items, most of the items, most of the enemies you can just run past. And in other games, at least to me, it felt like usually, yes, you can run past them, but there are certain places where there is just, you cannot run past them and you need to kind of shoot them and kill them and whatever. In Signalis, I didn't feel like that. By the end of the game, I had too much ammunition on every weapon. And like, you have this special flare gun that has quite limited ammunition. I did the final boss only using that one weapon because of how much ammunition I had, which is kind of insane, but... And to put it into perspective, you have 6 inventory spaces. I had 1 heal, a flare gun, and then all of the other spaces were ammunition of that super rare flare ammunition. Which was kind of a weird experience, but so yeah, if you're the type of player that just runs past everything, it's kind of an interesting, where you could basically do kind of a pacifist run except the bosses. Now I'm gonna talk about the enemies. I think the enemy variety is very good, nothing to nitpick there. And what is very cool is before you face new enemies, you get introduced them through files, and it kind of talks about and gives you a reason of how they fight and why they fight like that for the reason. For example, the most unique enemy that I have faced and seen quite in a long time is Colibri. I think that's how they're called. And apologies, my lore with this game is not the best. And I cannot tell you 100%, but I think in the files the game tells you that they're sensitive to certain frequencies. And in the game, when you go into the building that has a colibri, your mechanic of defeating them is by certain frequencies flash on the screen, and you have to be fast enough to put that frequency in your radio and it kills the colibri, which I think is an amazing idea. At first I was considering putting it as a minus for some reason, like it being like too fast and I'm being too slow. I don't know why, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, no, this is actually a great enemy. And because you need to be fast with it, again the game builds tension. You're tense in those situations. It's great. And now other enemies, they are unique, but they are unique in combat situations. And again, the same problem comes back of you just running past most of them, apart from Colibri, which kinda defeats the purpose of them being different, it almost feels like. Even though still, the interactions are different, so I'm not gonna give that a minus. So now we move to the section of boss fights, and I think there's not all of them, but this game has quality over quantity. And I can only clap to how good these boss fights are. I really enjoy them, and even though maybe you could argue that the first boss fight is not that unique, I think these days, especially when you're playing like newer Resident Evil games, kind of feels like, compared to those, that first fight is actually very unique, and it just makes you appreciate these kinds of fights. And like, I came away, and to be honest, at the start of the game I was kind of struggling with the puzzles. I kind of was dejected and didn't really want to continue, but this boss fight made me say like, no, this is a gem of a game and I need to continue, which I'm happy I did. I'm glad that I did it. And I think the boss fights are just high, like they're very good, apart from the second boss fight, which I would talk about it in my boss rankings. I'm probably just gonna be repeating myself in that video, but I just still want to talk about it, which is the whole idea is that the boss fight is chasing you. You cannot kill him, but the girl that you're kind of friends with, you could say, which is not true, she is charging a weapon or reloading it that can kill it, and your whole thing is to waste time, run away from it and shoot at it until it's stunned, and then you can stun him and it's gonna be easier. The problem is, just like with the enemies, in this boss fight you can just run away from it, so you're just running in circles doing nothing for like 2 minutes. I didn't count. And after that, the girl's like, yeah, he's dead. I guess it's cool, but like, I'm just running around the pillar. So compared to the other two boss fights, this was kinda lower, but it was still fine. I think, but overall, the two bosses, they were like legit perfect in my opinion with what they wanted to do. And the second boss kinda suffered from the running away syndrome, or whatever I should call it. Now I'm gonna move on to the last section, which is story. And I'm not gonna give much positives or negatives, because I think don't fully understand the lore anyways, so I cannot critique it. The only critique I'm gonna give it is I feel like story is what your character is doing. Like, let's say for example, God of War, like Kratos, you're playing as him, that story was happening. Lore, it's what's happening in the background, and it's kind of like lore is what is Dark Souls story. Like, you're not getting it, you have to read what happened, like descriptions. And Signalis, it has a story, but it feels like it's very tied to you knowing the lore. Which in that case, I could see some people, if they don't watch a video, just not understanding what's happening at all throughout the game. And hopefully that's not the case, because I think I kinda get it. Kinda, what I mean by that is, except the endings, like I don't get that, but the actual story of what you do up to the ending, I think I kinda get it, to at least enjoy the story. But I'm hoping that I'm the only one, and there's not as much people, there's not gonna be many who's going to struggle, because then if you cannot understand the story, there's not really a story for you, because you don't know what's happening. Okay, I went on a tangent, but whatever, it's fine. So now I'm gonna to touch a bit on the characters, because I think I always like to talk about them, and the writing itself. I think the characters are fun, mysterious, interesting, well developed, well fleshed out, and my boy Chadler, or Adler, whatever you wanna call him, is a cool character. Based, you know what I mean, all those words apply to him. There you go. And I think all of the characters, in my opinion, are believable. And if they are believable, the game does its job. And I think the story, if you do get it, I think it's very fleshed out, and it feels a lot different compared to most of the game stories, which is a plus again. So I'm not gonna talk much about the lore. Again, as I said, I don't understand it enough to critique anything of it, or give my opinion of what, in my opinion, should be better, or is already great. So let's move on to the score that I'm going to give you, and a conclusion. And the score I'm giving to this game is, after a long consideration, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. And at first I thought I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, because the first intro was kinda, as I said, with the puzzles, me banging my head against the wall. But after that boss fight, and me kinda getting into a groove and understanding how these stories, how these puzzles are, how I should approach them, I think I started to enjoy the game a lot. And I just debated, should I take away points because I wasn't prepared kind of for these kinds of puzzles, or should I not? And I decided to not take it away, because I think if I played it the second time, I would have an even better experience now, knowing the introduction and everything. So hopefully you agree with this, with my opinion, you agree with my thoughts. If not, write your opinions in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully not after like 3 weeks, and like after like 3 days. See ya.